Hello friends, welcome back and Happy New Year. It's 2025, time for a new start, as they say. I don't really do New Year's resolutions, but I do want to come back and talk to you about some plans I have this year for some adventures. And I want to give you some backstory, and I want to tell you how I find adventure in a minivan and what got it started. And back in 2019, I started looking into van life. You know, I was in that corporate job that was kind of sucking all the energy out of me, and I started kind of longing for some adventure. I was longing to get out of the house and do something new. It was just the same old day to day, like Groundhog Day, the movie. It was just the same old, and it was starting to become toxic, and I was just really kind of starting to think about what I could do to give some excitement to my life. And I started looking into van life, and I was really intrigued. And you know, I think everybody at some point has the aspiration of getting into a van or an RV and traveling around the country. And I can't say that I was any exception to that, but for the practical standpoint, it just didn't make sense to me to spend the money, invest the money into a big Class B motorhome or an RV, or even buy a cargo van and convert it when I knew that it was just me. And I was intimidated by the thought of driving some big vehicle into a city where I wanted to like explore, say New York, Philadelphia, Washington, D.C., and not having anywhere to park it. And I was intimidated, or I was actually, you know, the practical side of me was thinking about the gas mileage and the upkeep and all that. It just didn't make sense. So I started thinking, why not do that with a minivan? So then I found some folks on YouTube who were doing that with a minivan. They were basically turning their minivans into like a small camper. So at the end of 2019, it was like in October of 2019, I started looking for a used minivan that I could pay cash for and that I could convert into a little camper. And my idea was that, you know, I was working remotely, and I had already done some travel down to my sister's in Florida in the winter and taken my hotspot and my laptop and worked from down there. And I really enjoy going down there in January and February because I don't like cold. And it's not so cold up here in North Carolina, but it's cold enough that it's uncomfortable. Today is really nasty. We're expecting some just freezing rain. Everybody else is going to get some pretty snow from this winter storm Blair that's coming, but we're just getting crappy cold rain and maybe some sleet. And this is the time of year that I start thinking about escaping. So anyway, back to the end of 2019, and you know what happened in 2020. In 2019, October, I bought a 2008 Honda Odyssey. It had 135,000 miles on it. It was a one-owner car. It had been traded in at the local dealer, and I got it for $5,900. And I brought it home and I started converting it. So I'm gonna move over because I'm gonna show you some pictures right here. So I put a bed in it. I didn't have to build anything. I bought a narrow twin bed from Amazon, which is 30 inches wide and 6 feet long, and I bought a memory foam mattress to go on it. I put some other gadgets in there, and as I'm looking at the pictures later, I'm sure I'll think of things that I can't think of right now. I bought a Jackery, a 500-watt Jackery, because I needed power to power my small refrigerator. I bought a little Alpicool refrigerator that didn't take much power, and I bought a solar panel, 100-watt folding portable solar panel to charge the Jackery when I was sitting still. And so the plan was to camp, stealth camp, stay in places, you know, on the way to other places, find places to stay. Sometimes I'd stay in campgrounds. And I was going to go down to Florida and spend a month at the first part of 2020, or I was going to take the month of February and go down and spend an entire month in Florida for February. So I converted my camper. I did some trial runs in that fall around town, just with I'd take my van down to a park down by the river and a van down by the river and do my work for the day. And I started taking just a couple overnight trips to a local campground just to kind of see how it felt to sleep in there and work out all the kinks. So I had some lights, and I had a lot of things that I didn't ever need, that I never used, that I really don't need. So anyway, I did what I planned, and like something around January 31st of 2020, I took off south, and I headed for Florida. And I had scored a 5-night campground stay in Bahia Honda State Park, which is in the Florida Keys. And it's very hard to get reservations, but I had found a website that was kind of that would send me alerts when something came open. And after a couple months, I finally scored that. And then I had some reservations at Fort DeSoto County Park, which is in Pinellas County, Florida, right south of St. Pete, which is where I like to go, also on the Gulf Coast. So I had a couple of campground stays, and then I had some nights in between where I was just going to be winging it. And I drove down. I spent my very first night ever in my van in a truck stop. I think it was around Jacksonville, Florida. And I didn't sleep hardly a wink because it was noisy and I was nervous. But then as things went on, it got easier. I visited my sister in the Tampa area for a few days, and then I took off and headed down to the Keys, and I drove down the Gulf Coast. I stopped in Naples. I spent the night in the Cracker Barrel in Naples, Florida, twice, once on the way down and once on the way back up. I stayed in a Walmart parking lot somewhere around Bradenton one night, and that was an experience. There was a little scuffle outside of my van between two other car dwellers, and I had to get out of there. It was a lot of fun, and that adventure really changed my life. I went on down to the Keys and spent a week. I went to Key West, which I love. I've been to Key West, I think 5 or 6 times, and I love to go down there because it's just a very unique place, but it's very expensive. I have not yet gotten up the gall or the nerve to try to stealth camp overnight in Key West, because my understanding is if you get caught, they'll put you in jail. So I haven't done that, but I have spent the night in the Keys in my van without a reservation, stealth camping in a couple of different places, not in Key West though. And so I was gone for almost a month. And when I was gone, I worked from my computer. I took my laptop, I would park in view of a beach, and I would work, and I would go walk on the beach, and I just had a fabulous time all by myself and did a lot of introspection. I did some writing. I went to bed early, and I got up with the sun, and I spent some good quiet, just leisurely time in the Keys. And then I drove back up the Atlantic coast and stopped in around the Vero Beach area, which I really loved, and I spent some time there. And I started hearing these things. I don't really watch the news or listen to the news, but you know, on social media, you can't help but kind of get glimpses of what's going on in the news. And I started hearing about this thing going on, this virus that was out there, coronavirus. And so I decided to head back a few days early, and I got back home the last week in February, but a few weeks before I had planned. And then I went to a friend's wedding, and then the following week, the whole world shut down due to COVID. So my whole plan to go do these adventures 2 or 3 times a year, month-long adventures, kind of went out the window with COVID. Then I ended up in 2021, I bought this old house that's down in my neighborhood that I had to restore. I was hauling things and ended up taking the camper apart and using my van for hauling things around and just as a general purpose vehicle. And this is my 2008 Honda minivan, and I love this little van. I have a 2014 now. In 2023, I decided I want to just buy a newer one because the 2008 doesn't have a backup camera, and it doesn't have Bluetooth, which is not a really big deal, but the backup camera was kind of a big deal because when I have my window covers on in the back of my 2008 is I have to back up using my side mirrors if I can't see out the back windows. So I have that. I felt like I really wanted a backup camera. So I bought a 2014, and I haven't done a lot with it. I did, so here's the other adventure, here's the other van adventures I've taken, other than just a couple of semi-local trips. In 2023, in September 2023, I decided I want to go across the country and I want to drive. It's always been on my bucket list to drive up the Pacific Coast Highway in California and go to Big Sur and then drive all the way up to the northern part of the highway and go to the Redwoods and kind of see San Francisco and drive across the Golden Gate. And I wanted to do that, but I didn't want to drive all the way across the country. I was working, I still had a full-time job. I didn't want to have to work while I was doing this. I just wanted to take a week and go to California. So I decided I was going to give it a go. I was going to attempt to fly across the country, rent a minivan, and use it to do my minivan adventures. And I did that. In September, around Labor Day 2023, I flew to San Francisco. I rented a minivan, and the one that they gave me was a Toyota Sienna hybrid, which is not what I wanted. I was really hoping for a Dodge Grand Caravan, which is what most rental minivans are, but I got a Sienna minivan, and they were like, and it was nice. It was really nice, but the reason I wanted the Caravan was because both the second row and the third row of seats fold into the floor on those. And with the Sienna hybrid, the middle row did not fold into the floor. So it was a little bit of a pain. I just had to push the middle seats all the way to the front, all the way as far as I could forward, and fold them forward and try to sleep in the back. I took, I checked one huge bag, and I had an air mattress in there and some other camping gear. And I had a list of cheap things I could buy camping gear wise. And when I got to San Francisco, I went to Walmart and bought some other things. And so I drove up the Pacific Coast Highway, and I spent a week in that rented minivan. I ended up spending a couple of nights in a hotel because that air mattress was just so uncomfortable, and I don't do air mattresses anymore. That just didn't work for me. But I knew that after I did that with a few tweaks, I could comfortably rent minivans to do the same thing if I wanted to take a trip far away and I didn't feel like driving there. So I did that in September of 2023. I had a plan to go back to Florida last year in January in my 2014, my newer minivan, which I had kind of gotten some window covers and moved everything from the old van, or where I was storing it, into the new van. And my son and his fiance were borrowing the second van. And then on Christmas Eve, my older son had car trouble, and I loaned him my 2008 minivan. And he hit a deer going 70 miles an hour on the way home. And I can pretty much say he totaled it, but he almost totaled it. So this time last year, I was without a car. I knew that if I didn't figure out something, I wasn't going to be able to go to Florida and do the minivan thing. So I was without a van last winter for a couple of months while my minivan was in the shop getting fixed. And so in January, I decided to rent a minivan again. And this time I had 2 weeks. I was gonna go to my sister's and work and continue and visit her for a week and work, and then I was gonna take another week of PTO and go back down to the Keys. So I had reservations at John Pennekamp State Park, which is in Key Largo, and which is really known for its snorkeling and the big coral reef that's off the coast down there. And I rented a minivan. I flew down to Tampa. I got a Chrysler Voyager when all the seats folded into the floor. And so last year at this time, I did another minivan trip in a rented minivan. And then I flew Southwest, so I had 2 free checked bags. So I was able to take a lot more stuff with me. So I drove down to her house in the Tampa area, and I spent a few days there, and then I headed down to the Keys in the rented minivan with a much more comfortable mattress and a cooler and a lot more stuff. And I spent a few nights at John Pennekamp, and I went back to Key West, and I had a great time, but a shorter time. And then because I was in a rented minivan, and it was costing me some money, it wasn't like I could just stay as long as I wanted, because I also had a plane ticket. You know, I'd rather drive someplace because I can then be on my own timeline. But I was on a schedule here because I had a return flight, and I had to return this minivan in. So I did that trip in a rented minivan, and it was a great experience. This past May, I took the 2014 Odyssey and outfitted it again, and went to the mountains of North Carolina and Virginia. I had a week off work, and I took off for a week and drove up the Blue Ridge Parkway, which I had done before. I live in Eastern North Carolina, but I had a great time, and it was just it's a beautiful time of year in May when the rhododendrons are blooming, and I had a lot of adventures there. I'm going to be putting pictures of of a lot of what I'm telling you right here as I'm going through. So here we are, 2025, and I have gotten rid of that obligation of that full-time job that I have to log into every day. And even last week, I canceled my T-Mobile hotspot, which I only had because I wanted to have a backup internet option when I was traveling so that I could work. And now I don't have to worry about that. And I've been driving my 2008 van again. It got fixed, and I realized when it was wrecked and when it was in the shop that because of that first trip that I took to Florida in it in 2020, I really have a sentimental attachment to that little van, even though I have a newer one. And I've been driving that little van and letting my kids or, you know, whoever borrow the other one. And I really, when I go on my next adventure, I'm going to take the old van again because I really love that little van. So I'll be outfitting that van when the weather clears up and when it's a little bit warmer than 30 degrees outside. And I'm going to show you how I turn it into a camper without having to build anything. It's a no-build build. There's videos all over YouTube about no-build builds. I'm going to be showing you how I'm turning that into a camper. And at the end of February, the end of January, 1st of February, I've got a couple of weeks where I'm not going to have any, not going to have to work. You know, I'm teaching part-time this semester, but I'm going to have a couple weeks off, maybe 2.5 weeks. And I'm going to take my little van down to Florida again, and I'm going to take you along with me and show you how I do it. I'm going to show you the places that I find to park and sleep. I'm going to show you all the gadgets that I have. And I'm really looking forward to sharing this part of my life with you because I've kind of had it on the back burner for a while. And this year I've got some adventures planned. So I've got that adventure in January, and fingers crossed. And it depends on what happens with my business and whether I think I can get away when the time comes. But very possibly, may take a trip out to the Pacific Northwest in the van this summer and for a month or two, closer to 2, because it's going to take me a while to get there. So, I'll be making more videos. I was going to make a video for you today of my van, but it is raining outside and it's really nasty. So we're going to just have to make do with the pictures that I've posted on here. And I'm going to be making another video as I start putting my van together for the camping trip. Please ask me your questions in the comments. I'd love to also do a live stream soon to answer any questions that you have for me, whether it's about minivan adventures, retiring from your job, side hustles, having grown children as a single mom and being in a single empty nester. Whatever it is that you think I can help you with, I'm happy to help you. This YouTube channel, that's what I'm here for. I am here to give to the world the things that I have learned and the things that I know and my gifts or talents. I want to share them with you. and I'm not an expert in anything, but I think I know a little bit about a whole lot of things. So I guess I'm a jack of many trades, Jill of many trades. Please leave me a comment and let me know what you want to hear about, and let me know what you would think of me doing a live stream, and would you attend, and what kind of questions would you like answered. I hope you're staying warm, and I'll see you in the next video.